Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Encircle podcast. I'm Sky. My pronouns are he/him, and we have a really cool Trans Day of Visibility edition, podcast edition for you guys. And we're excited for you to hear it.
Hi, Mitski Avalōx, pronounced she, her. I am from St. George, interning at the St. George location.
Cool. My name is Logan. I use he, they pronouns, and I am the Friendship Circle facilitator for the trans group at the Salt Lake House.
That's awesome. My name's Sky. I already said that, but in case you can't recognize my voice, um, I actually facilitate the QBIPOC Friendship Circle at Provo, and I'm an intern at Provo as well. So, yeah.
I should probably say that I'm also the QBIPOC
Yeah.
at St. George.
QBIPOC buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah.
So I'm a senior
Yeah.
at Texas State University studying for my bachelor's. After that, I'm a grant writer, editor, designer, all that kind of stuff, and I want to work for some nonprofits.
That's awesome.
And just kind of trans advocacy as well.
Heck yeah.
I am a senior at the U of U right now, studying social work, and I'm also getting a certificate in substance use disorders. Right now, I pretty much spend all my time at a recovery center, and I am going into my master's this summer.
That's awesome. That's really noble work. I actually went to residential treatment, so that's pretty cool. I think it's important that we acknowledge that we are an incredibly resilient group of people, and that like we should celebrate trans and queer joy more than just like the depressing part of like life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's important that we acknowledge those moments of euphoria instead of dysphoria all the time. You know?
I just want to agree with you for a sec on Trans Day visibility. For me, it matters
Hmm.
because we need to like honor those before us. Those
Yeah.
like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera,
Hmm.
Doreen
Hell yeah.
Perry, Angie Extravaganza. They were truly trailblazers like for my community, those that share intersectionality, who are women of color. Like these women have inspired generations to accomplish what they deserve. What they stood for did not die with them, but like it continues to live in each and every one of us. As
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important that we acknowledge the intersectionality of the trans community and just communities in general. But yeah,
Yeah, I totally agree. Intersectionality is a big part of it, but as someone who's like kind of privileged to be a white trans person and like passing privilege, I like it's good to celebrate the fact that I'm trans because a lot of the time I don't really like to acknowledge it.
hmm
But it's good to like educate people and make sure that like we celebrate that because it's not something that I should feel ashamed of or anything like that.
yeah. To go along with what you said, I think I speak for myself. Mitski, correct me if I'm wrong, but we all pass pretty well, I think, and that's a privilege.
the concept of passing is such, I don't know, it's so weird to me because for me, my confidence doesn't come from others, it comes from myself. I mean, like, I don't go out and hope, oh, I hope this person likes how I look. And I don't seek confidence from that. For me, I look at myself in the mirror and say, yes, I am hot, I am pretty, and I'm so confident in myself. And I know that I'm amazing and do all these things. And
Yeah.
so for me, the concept of passing is kind of iffy. I
hmm
mean, sure, some days I'll feel, I'll be wearing a hoodie and joggers and be like, oh, but other days, it's confident, beautiful, etc.
I think that like the concept of passing is way more important the earlier you are in your transition. Like you get caught up in your head about it and you're like, oh, I really hope that like they see me as a guy today. Like I just want to be one of the guys. Um, and that's how I was for a very long time. And then I like started being able to pass and it became more of like when somebody asked me what my gender identity was or my sexuality or anything like that, I'm just Logan. That's what I answer. Like it's, but that's
Yeah.
a privilege to be able to be at that point.
How long has it been since all of us transitioned? Like since we started like the process, not even medically, just in general. Like how long has it been since you came to terms with the fact that you were trans and maybe came out about it?
For me, I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my story just because
Yeah,
it's
let's do
easier
that.
to
Yeah.
that. So my story is like so similar yet so different from my other trans peers. it was a life or death situation for me. Like, I never once liked myself, how I looked. It took such a toll on me to the point where I attempted suicide. I tried to fulfill myself in other ways, like graduating from high school with my associate degree, finding professional opportunities to make it in this world, and I wasn't happy. I just was not happy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I've seen Pose, I don't know if you guys know that show, but it's a show
Yeah.
about the trans and LGBT community in the 80s during the HIV and AIDS epidemic
Mhm.
that I had realized that what I've been missing. And soon after I watched it, I secretly sought out HRT and started my journey. It has been a year and a half now since I started that journey, and I am 100, 200% more successful and prettier and confident than my 5-year-old self could imagine. I mean, there were obvious challenges. I no longer speak to my family, and that doesn't sadden me because I have surrounded myself with friends that cheer me up when I'm sad, embrace me with joy and more. I mean, to them, for me, they're my family. And as the saying goes, the
Yeah.
blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the wound.
I've
And
actually never heard that. That's cool. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and that's such a big creed for the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
When you're ostracized by your family, you find peers who are like you, and they become family. And yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the quote that you said?
Yeah. Can you?
Um, so I guess the question was, how long have you started
No,
transitioning?
the quote you said.
The quote, I'm so sorry. I thought you
No
said
worries.
question.
It's all good. No.
The quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the wound."
Cool. I'm writing that down.
I don't know how that saying is, but I've heard it so many times.
Yeah.
And for me, like, my family would be like, "Oh, well, you have to deal with this person in your family because they're blood, like
Yeah.
they're your sibling or whatever." And for me, just I feel like you shouldn't have to put up with that, especially if
Yeah.
they're not honoring of you and
Mhm.
disrespectful. Like, for me, and this is something that shouldn't really be said, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
say it. You should
Mhm.
be selfish. Be
Yeah.
selfish.
Something that I've heard is instead of being selfish, being self-full. So like you're still able to help yourself, but you're not like, I don't know, taking from others, being selfish, but self-full instead, and like celebrating that because you should be
Yeah.
allowed to like fulfill yourself.
To go along with what you said, Mitski, another quote I've heard is that you don't get to choose your family, but you get to choose where you go from there. My chosen family has been a life saving thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mhm.
just like insane to think like where I would be without the people in my life who have really shaped me. I think to go a little bit into my story, if that's okay with you guys,
Of
I grew
course.
up in a community, a Jewish Persian community, and one where we were relatively religious, but I was the first in my community to come out. And I think, like we talked about the panel last week, there's there has been people in my family's part of the world who are trans for thousands of years. But when the colonizers came, and when the colonizers came and like invaded or forced us to assimilate, that is when um, being trans and being gay were no longer accepted. Being queer was a death sentence, essentially. And I think coming to the United States, my parents coming to the United States, to the U.S. and immigrating here made it even harder for them and more like repressed. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to do my parents proud by at any cost. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm first generation American. My parents immigrated here from Iran. We are refugees, and I think that the reason that I was so scared and that some people in our community still do not accept their LGBT children is because LGBTQ plus children is because they want to assimilate so badly. They want to achieve the American dream, but that was built on the backs of people like us. We don't get recognition. We still like we still struggle. We still are told to go back to your country and stuff like that. People of color sorry, the way America treats people of color, especially trans people of color, is something that we should be ashamed of and we should be working to address.
I completely agree. Completely. Like in Mexico, same situation. Like
Mm-hmm.
any country you can think that was colonized by European powers, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I know like there's still tribes in Mexico. I forget the terminology, but in some tribes they have trans individuals and they have a certain special title.
Yeah, they're like esteemed, but like in the West, the colonizers. came and saw broken gendered roles to them and essentially bullied their way into our countries and decided to change things. So, yeah,
And I kind of feel like our responsibility now is to try to uphold
yeah.
our ancestors
And our traditions, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I was the first in my community to come out, and at my school, and in my city. It was just awful. Like, at first I thought I was a lesbian, realized that was not it, but I didn't really have the vocabulary to articulate what I felt. I mean, well, I kind of thought I was trans, but then people were like, "No, you're not trans," like, and they tried to tell me I wasn't or whatever, and it like kind of set me back in my path to being Sky. I still quite frequently, this is a new change to call myself Sky. I still quite frequently dead name myself. Don't know if any of you guys do that, but this is a pretty recent journey for me. I came out my freshman year of college, and even then I wasn't really out my freshman year of college. I was like, oh, I have he, him. I told one of my teachers who like clocked me right away, who was also LGBT. She's like, what are your pronouns? And I'm like, he, him, but I don't want anyone to know. Please, like, don't refer to me that way. Like, I don't want anyone to know. And then by the end of that class, I came out, told everyone at the last day, I was like, look, I've been living a lie a little bit. Like, I'm trans, and my pronouns are he, him. Thank you guys for making this a safe space, and like stuff like that. And then I didn't look back really. So I'm fortunate enough to have been in therapy for like before it was cool. That's what I say now. Like, I've been in therapy since before it was cool. So I'm privileged enough to have had enough self discovery and to get to this point. But yeah,
Did you ever have kind of any interactions where you were ridiculed or
oh,
bullied?
100%. I talked about this in other podcasts, but yeah, I was bullied all throughout high school. Even before I knew I was trans and stuff, people would tell me that they didn't want to change in front of a lesbian in the locker room. They asked me to move my locker. It was pretty painful. And one of my friends I grew up with, who was really close friends with my sister, is a staunch supporter. She told me, "Well, what did you expect when you came out?" Like, and that really stung, and it still stays with me to this day. That people who you think will be on your side, people can be really cruel, you know? But people can also be really great. They'll surprise you, which is what I wanted to talk about a little bit. Like, my grandparents never thought they'd bend or, like, support me, you know? But they did. So that's a win, you know? If I can deal with one crappy person from my childhood turning on me, at least I have my grandparents, you know? Like, at least I have people in my life that support me and love me because of who I am instead of in spite of who I am.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, like because of who you are, not in spite. And I feel like it's so fulfilling when somebody who you didn't think was going to accept you accepts you. Like, it's crazy. I don't know, when I wanted to get top surgery, I thought it was going to be like this whole big thing in my family. And I was all prepared and all anxious and like, okay, I need to like come, like, have this big, like, get all worked up about it. And then I told my dad, like, hey, I want to do this. And he was just kind of like, okay. And I was like, I had worked it up in my head so much and I thought that it wasn't going to be okay. But it was. So that's good.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I make things out to be like you psych yourself out, you know? Is that what that was? You kind of psyched yourself out? Yeah?
Yeah, and I don't know, my parents are, I don't know, we have like a weird relationship. We're not very emotional. My dad was kind of just like, if that's what the doctors say is next, which is
That's cool.
not the best. I don't know, he should believe his child, and not just
Mm,
say the doctor said so, so okay. I know I have trouble with that because my therapist, when I was in my freshman year of college, like said, yeah, Logan has gender dysphoria, Logan is trans. And my parents were like, that's not good enough, and needed to go take me to a psychologist to get diagnosed. And they like were
mm.
very serious about like it's very like I don't know, they were very serious about it, but it kind of hurt that they didn't believe their child, and then they also didn't believe my therapist, who is a licensed clinical social worker, so what I'm trying to be. So they went, I don't believe you or what you're trying to be, but I'm still fortunate enough to be able to have transitioned. So
I think we don't have to settle for scraps. Do you know what I mean? Like, not in your case, but in general. Like, if your parents don't support you or whatever, like you don't have to be around them nonstop. I know it's easier said than done, especially for BIPOC people, where like your family is like literally like broken their back to get you to America or whatever. Like they use those guilt trips. Like I literally say, pack your bags, we're going on a guilt trip. You know, like you feel like you're gonna dishonor your family, but like do what's best for you at the end of the day. You know, like if it's gonna be toxic for your mental health and stuff, do not hold on to those people. Say goodbye, or don't even say goodbye. Just be like, bye, Felicia, or something like. Feel like no, you have not, this relationship has not served me. These people are not my people anymore, and move on. I know it's way easier said than done, and I've learned this through a lot of therapy, but like, I think it's life changing to think about it like that. Like, relationships are supposed to be something where you learn from each other. You know, you're not supposed to just like be constantly teaching someone something or like being their personal Google or whatever, which is what I feel like I am constantly as a trans man of color. I feel like people are like, oh, tell me about this. And I'm like, how about you Google it? You know, like, or like I refer them to my website now. I have like a little blog so I don't have to constantly unearth my trauma, you know? But yeah, I'm just curious to hear about your guys' experiences with like people who come up, like if you find yourself being like a trans database or whatever. That's what I feel like a lot, or like LGBT database. Go ahead. Sorry.
Two things.
Hmm.
One, going back to the database, when people ask me questions, like I don't, I feel like people shouldn't be obligated to tell them everything. Like,
Yeah.
if you want me to respond with answers, one, Google is free. I am not. If you want to like get answers from me, I
Love
would
that.
need you to run my check.
Yeah.
One. Two, going back to the QBIPOC thing or BIPOC, coming from BIPOC families, the way I was able to separate being guilt tripped, like, oh yeah, they came to America for my well-being, etc.
Hmm.
For me, I always try to do well in school, and I was like, okay, I'm doing well in school. Why are they still mad at me? Like, why I'm being successful educationally? Why are they mad? Like, anything else should be irrelevant up to that point. Like, if
Hmm.
I can find a career and support myself and not have to go through the tribulations they did economically,
Hmm.
then why, like, their opinion outside of that does not matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For the
I
That's actually a
longest,
great way of
very
looking at it.
similar situation. Like my dad came over from England, so very different. But he was always like, I was like this perfect kid that like didn't do anything wrong, and I got all A's and whatever. And so I felt like all this pressure to be perfect, and also like my sister and my parents did not have a great relationship, so I was trying to like be perfect for that as well. And so it was hard to come out and say like, hey, actually, I'm like different. I'm trans, and they didn't really believe me because I'd never been somebody that like spoke out and like tried to make a difference.
Hmm.
I tried to fit in.
I'm a twin, so I definitely get that, Logan. I was the troublemaker though, kind of, or whatever, the troubled youth. You know, I'm a fraternal twin. My sister's great. God bless her. She's also LGBT, but the thing is like parents love to compare their kids, and it's like not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and like broccoli. You know, like we're not even like, you know what I mean? Like literally not even the same like food group. You know, I don't know. Just thinking about
I
that. Like, you know
completely
what I
understand.
mean?
Grandfather used to compare doing drugs with like LGBT
Yeah.
youths, and I was like, he used to say that doing drugs was in a sense better than being LGBT, and for the longest time it stuck with me. It stuck with me so hard because my brother was a heavy drug user, so I was like, I don't want to be worse than him, and so for the longest time I was denying like my sexuality, my identity,
Hmm.
until at one point I kind of in a sense outgrew and started to look at other resources and not just and when you grow up in a family and you see your father and mother as the only like correct source of information for most of your life until you realize that, oh yeah, these are people, these are human, they make mistakes, they think differently, they're biased, then you're like, okay, I can unlearn
Yeah.
this. And
I think that's kind of like coming of age. You realize your parents aren't perfect. You
mm-hmm.
know, like they're not like the end all and be all. That's what we have to learn. I think that's what we have to keep in mind. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for my schooling because now I've been able to actually have conversations with my parents and I've had the confidence to like understand our relationship. And that's a lot because of social work. So I'm really glad that I'm in that field. because it's helped with being trans.
And it's not only, I mean, the biggest bombshell you could probably tell your conservative parents is I'm trans, but I was speaking to my mother yesterday and she like went on a trip to Mexico and she's like, yeah, like the family can't know because they'll criticize me this and that. And I'm like, why do you have to lie? Like, why do you care what they think? Something as so little and insignificant as traveling. Like, why that doesn't matter? I mean, like,
Yeah.
and then she was like criticizing me because I don't have like my Instagram is private, and she's like, but they can see everything and blah blah, and I don't want issues. And I was like, look, I don't care what they say or think. Like, they're not in my life. One, two, they don't know fashion. Like, they're ugly. And not to like, who are they to criticize when they don't even
Yeah.
like? Anyway,
Like, do they really give a crap? You know what I mean? Like, or are they
yeah.
just trying to talk about something? You know, like that's
Hmm.
what I've learned about my family too. I don't think most of them give two flying trucks about it. You know, they're just
Yeah.
like trying to like have something to talk about gossip. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, my mother told all of my extended family without telling me. She just outed me to everyone. So I was like, cool, I guess I don't have to have this conversation now. And I'm not really close with any of my family members. So
Was that
the
hard?
um,
How was that?
it was shocking, and it just felt more like she was doing it for herself because she wanted to talk about it, as opposed
Mm,
to like, oh, here's this about my child. I don't know, but it should have been like they should have talked to me about it. Like, did I want
yeah.
them to know? Because like I don't know, we're trying to celebrate being trans, but with trans A, um, but it's scary to come out to everyone. Um,
Yeah, 100%. I feel like sexuality is like more accepted almost because people don't like get the whole gender thing, you know? Like they don't get why like I have to get tops. I don't have to, but like they don't get why like we want like my mom can or not my mom, my some of my grandparents or whatever. Some people I know are like you're going to mutilate yourself and I'm like no, I am going to be proud of the body I have. And I still am to some degree, which brings me to my therapeutic breakthrough, I guess. Um so body image issues, regarding body image issues, I found that like a lot of us do have them, you know? And I think that like because of my gender dysphoria and because of my body dysmorphia, I didn't want to get healthy because then if I do, I'm gonna look more like a cis woman or whatever, you know what I mean? Because I have like larger like chest area and stuff. And I realize that's why I've been like stress eating and stuff and not just stress eating, but like just like not treating myself well, you know? Like I gained a lot of weight because I didn't want to like be disciplined because I didn't want to look like a woman, you know? And
yeah.
that's not something that like sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say I had like the exact opposite experience where I like didn't want to be developing, so I like would not eat and would like try to make myself as small as possible so that it was like more masculine. So I just think that's interesting
Hmm.
how it's the two flips, like the two sides.
Yeah, I've heard eating disorders are rampant in the LGBT community or disordered eating really um and that kind of makes sense to all to me at least in the trans community is pretty common. Because we don't love our bodies yet. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe we do, but like I don't like my body right now. Do you know what I mean? Like not because of like my weight, but because I don't feel comfortable. Do you know what I mean? The dysphoria is so bad that I have to get haircuts every 2 to 3 weeks. You know, otherwise I feel like crap. You know, I don't know. And then also it has to do with the European beauty standards too. It gets like pretty froey if I don't cut it. You know, every 3 weeks it gets like pretty froey. But yeah,
I agree. Can we talk about some of the challenges that we face as a community and
100%.
right?
Yeah, let's do that.
Like, I know we have everyday social challenges, and obviously we have political challenges. Like, as we know,
Hmm.
Governor Cox vetoed a bill that would ban
God
trans
bless that man, man.
participating in sports. It's crazy, right? Like, I didn't think he would do that for us,
Hmm.
but
He's
he also
actually
made,
come to Encircle quite a few times. Sorry, go ahead.
he also made an
Yeah.
excellent point in his letter that he wrote.
Hmm. I saw that.
That puts like reality in your face. He said that over like 70,000 kids in Utah are participating in sports, yet only four are trans, and only one is participating in girls' sports.
Yeah.
So it's like it
It's
shouldn't be the big issue.
exclusion. It's not like protecting women's sports, you know?
Exactly. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be the big issue that those on the other side make it to be. And two, Black cis women have been criticized and seen as non-feminine for a very long time. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that they claimed Serena Williams must be a man since 1999, and they've
Yeah,
also called Sierra a hermaphrodite or trans since 2004. Like, they claim they can tell the difference between cis and trans people just by looking at them, and it's just like,
yeah,
you don't know anything, and you shouldn't even be speaking on trans issues, period.
yeah. I agree. I think the unfortunate thing is that people like to assume. Cis straight people like to assume, and that's a problem. I had a conversation with a couple of people about it, like, and they're like, "Oh, I don't understand why, like, I have to like refer to like they them pronouns are challenging, but like it's not that difficult. Do you know what I mean? Like people are like, oh, it's plural, and I'm like, okay, so here's the deal. Like you literally call someone's dog they them or whatever, or someone you don't know they them. Like maybe it's not technically grammatically correct. It's still like colloquially, it's definitely grammatically correct. Do you know what I mean?
Like
But
we
like
use, uh,
we use they them colloquially.
yeah,
Why is it so hard for people to like get pronouns, you know? Or like if someone's dog can be gendered correctly, I think I can too, you know? And people are like constantly making microaggressions like, "Oh, you passed so well. Cool." But that's not my goal. My goal is to be me, you know? And
yeah.
like I don't know, just microaggressions are freaking ridiculous to me. Like just don't say things that could be construed as offensive, you know?
Or how like people say, "Oh, well, it's just I've thought of you as a boy for so long that I keep saying he him." Well, it's more like when you see a child and you're like, "Oh, like what's their like? Oh, she's so pretty," and like, "Oh, actually, it's a boy," and they're like, "Oh, he like just switch it up in their brain."
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
And it's like you can do that. It's just you don't want to. You don't want to put the work.
Yeah, it's yeah. It's
And
about
I'm
effort, I think.
very feminine, so people were like, "Oh no, he can't be trans because like he's like I refer to myself as a little fairy boy. Like I feel like that is very like representative of myself." And they're like, "Oh well, he's
Yeah.
feminine, so I could not possibly gender him correctly." Um,
Yeah.
frustrating. But also
Yeah,
today,
it's not. Yes, sir,
it was
good.
interesting because on like my name badge that I wear for my internship, I taped onto it like a little thing that says he him, and there was another coworker who was like, "Oh, what is that?" and was questioning me about it, and um, tried to mansplain to me what being trans was, and also was like, "How were people misgendering you?" Because that's why I put my pronouns on there, and he thought that I could be transitioning the other way. So like you never know.
Mostly legislative, or what do you think is the biggest challenge we face? I think it's people like J.K. Rowling, like people thinking that we don't exist. Do you know what I mean? Visibility, I think, is our biggest challenge. Not remembrance, not necessarily like hate crimes as much. Do you know what I mean? Even though I'm constantly terrified of it. Do you know what I mean? Like hate crimes are really messed up and they happen. They do. But I feel like we're so scared and living in fear that we can't actually live. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not like living, we're worrying, you know? Like life is hard as a trans person, but it's also pretty beautiful because you can stand in two different worlds. You know what I mean? Like I was born as a woman, so I understand what it's like to be oppressed there. And as a man, I understand what it's like to feel incompetent and have to like and feel like you want to attack someone else. Do you know what I mean? Like it teaches us remarkable empathy for both genders or all genders, I think really, for non-binary people as well because we're all like growing and changing, you know? Like we have so much to like give. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm looking at applying to different firms right now for PR and I want to work at this all woman firm, but I don't know if they'll take me because I'm trans or because I'm a male. But like maybe if I tell them like do you know what I mean? Like do we want to be the affirmative action hire or the diversity hire or do we want to like you know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like they need different perspectives, but does that make us feel tainted? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Does that make you feel bad if you were hired as a diversity hire? Would you like not in like a like oh you're a diversity hire, but like that's part of the reason they hired you? Would that make you feel less than?
For me, not necessarily. If it pays the
Yeah,
bills, it pays the bills. I mean, if they
yeah,
treat you right, great. Like if I was at diversity hire, they treat me well and they give me a paycheck, that's check, check,
mm,
check for me. But going back to what you were saying, for like the legislative side, I feel
Mm,
like yes, that does make a difference in our lives, but it's
mm,
on a community level so much because it's how, you can pass and, say, and talk, go back to like the 50s, like interracial marriage was illegal and all these other things. And then they made it so it wasn't illegal, and yet still in the community, people were still hating on interracial marriage. And so any of the work that we do has to be on the community level. Like,
it's a
yes,
micro level, yeah.
yeah,
It's not
exactly.
macro
The
yet.
level, like the community level. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. It can be so hard. But I like Encircle's approach to it because before I used to be such like a aggressive, guns blazing,
Yeah.
hostile
Like
person.
angry person. Yeah.
When
Angry
talking to people that
trans
don't
person,
support
whatever at the counter. Yeah, I got you.
exactly.
Yeah.
I like
And then people don't see
aggressively
us.
say cis people have no place in like telling trans people what to do or LGBT plus people what to do. Like especially cis men. Like pardon me for saying this, but half of cis men don't even wash themselves properly. So why would I even listen to their opinion about my life? But
Yeah.
then passive me says the best way to convince anyone, especially cis people, to help our cause is to sit down and talk to them. Like let them get to know you, let them know you're human. Like that's what Encircle has taught me is
Yeah.
besides only love. And for the longest time, I didn't really understand that. Like I was like
Yeah.
such a hardcore. You need to support LGBTQ plus, and yes, that's true. But for them, that's how they get these conservative parents in through the door to show them that we're not monsters.
Yeah.
And this also allows their queer children to be saved by letting them know that they have a safe space in the community.
Yeah. I think it's also like regarding that what you just said. I think it's also important that we like visibility is great on a macro level, but I think it's more important to actually know a trans person personally than have someone like Laverne Cox appear on TV. Not that that's bad. Do you know what I mean? But like we don't like I feel like parents don't get trans representation because it's not correct in the media and because they don't know anything about this celebrity who's trans. You know what I mean? Like Elliot Page, Laverne Cox, great advocates for the community, great
Kenny
people.
Rodriguez,
Yeah. All these
Tommy
people are great,
Jackson,
but like,
Cynthia
how
Moore.
much? Yeah, exactly. How much influence do they have over individual people versus actually knowing someone? Statistics. I'm not going to throw out like statistics say or whatever because that's not accurate. But um, it was told to me, and the way I understand it is the only way we can create lasting social change is having cis straight people who may be homophobic or transphobic show them that we are humans at our core. We are still good people and set an example. Do you know what I mean? Not even just set an example, but like help them have positive experiences with us. But that's so much pressure to put on us. Do you know what I mean? Like to put on marginalized people, to put all the pressure on marginalized people. I think that's pretty messed up. But what are we gonna do if we don't do that? You know, like I'm like literally don't know the answer. You know what I mean?
I totally think that it's important to build that relationship and like have that interpersonal relationship because otherwise it seems like you're like a fake person, you're fictional, and like you have to kind of it sucks because like we were saying earlier, like we don't want to be Google, but we have to supply them with information of like why we can be the person that we want to be. Something I'm kind of proud of is like at my high school they had the gendered like gowns, and I was like, why do we even need to have it gendered? There's absolutely no reason. And I had pretty much the entire student body saying that they wanted to keep it how it was, and then little Logan being like, okay, but here's these a million reasons why it's important for it to not be gendered. And they ended up switching it so it wasn't gendered because like I had actual statistical reasons as opposed to just like I just thought I was going to wear this color across the football field. It was really
Yeah,
important.
and literally, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And literally, gowns don't like fit to your like graduation gowns don't fit to your body. It's literally a long flowy robe. Like you don't need to gender a robe, do you? No.
If you think that's crazy, I don't know if you guys knew this, but I've been doing some research for my capstone and it's trans related. But I found out that I don't know, I don't exactly know the timeline, but they used to, set up or job openings as gendered. So you'd have like all of the right. They used to have like women jobs, men jobs, and they
Dude,
would
how
categorize it.
recent did they stop it?
I'm sure it was like 50s, 60s, 40s. I
Still
don't remember.
though, did you know that a woman couldn't open a bank account without her husband or male relatives' permission until like 1980 something.
I
Isn't
believe
that
that.
absurd?
Yeah. Hmm.
80s, really, the 80s. We
Yeah.
could do better. We do better. Like I think legislation and change isn't happening fast enough for us. Like for us as people, for me personally, I don't think it's happening fast enough. I think I want it to be done faster than it will actually be done, because I'm impatient and because I just I feel like I'm like constantly like on the defense. Like we're constantly having to protect ourselves, and that's not cool. It's not fun. It's just the way it is right now, and that really sucks.
I agree. What are some, going back to like the prompts, but what are some words of encouragement you can give to the young trans individuals today, the youth, our
It gets
future?
better,
Mhm.
especially once you grow up. Like you don't have to stay in that same crappy little town. You know what I mean? Like life goes on. Like whether it's a good way or a bad way, life always goes on. You are stronger than you give yourself credit for, and you can do anything you set your mind to. Almost anything, I think. You know what I mean? Like when there's a will, there's a way. Like try and find like ways you can get involved or find another trans friend. Like join Discord. I don't know. Like literally whatever. Like you have a community, whether you want to like find it or not. Like that's up to you. But like you have a community, you always will.
Not only that, but the world is so big. It's so big.
Hmm.
It's crazy. Like to think that you're gonna live a certain way for the rest of your life, like you
Yeah.
said, you'll help grow.
And
Yeah.
like you are more than just like being trans. You are a whole person. You can like acknowledge as part of yourself and find a community, but that doesn't have to be your everything. Like you can like I don't know. I think it's important to remember that because when I was younger, I was very caught up in like, this is my entire identity, this is my whole thing, and that's all I could focus on. But I've been able to grow and now I can help other people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's only natural when you first come out as whatever to like latch onto it and start running with it because you've been hiding it for so long. But the truth is, we're more than just our sexuality, more than our identity. We're like, I'm my father's son, I'm my mother's son, I am loyal, I am proud, I am empathetic, Like we're all like in a conglomerate of so many different things and so many different personality traits. We're not just trans people, you know? And it's
Hmm.
important to recognize.
Something I would say to the young trans kids, and this sounds kind of cliche, but be
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Like I know it's especially hard when you're surrounded by peers that are considered the norm, like
Mm-hmm.
wear, I don't know, Bass Pro like hats. I
Bass
don't
Pro Hats, yeah,
But
for
here's
sure.
what I tell myself that takes away the fear. And I mean, I haven't done this as a child when I was in high school because wasn't at where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But be fierce. Don't take anything others say so harshly. Half of
Mm-hmm.
them do not even have a personality, or they have terrible fashion. Well, like, why would you take any insults for someone who wears baseball caps every day?
Or
Like,
like they're like ignorant, you know what I mean? They're from like a really tiny place. Like they're not,
exactly.
yeah, they're not
And they
like
fear you.
indicative of the rest of the world. Yeah.
They fear you for your authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and here's something that isn't ever said, and I already think I already said this, but be selfish. Like, I'm not saying don't share your jelly beans or chips, but I'm saying I think you said to be selfful and do what you want to do for your own happiness. Never do anything
Mm-hmm.
that causes you harm just because it makes someone else feel better. And you should always dedicate yourself to living your life for more, settling for more. It's always settling for more.
Yeah, never settle for less. I think we're pretty cool as a like group, like how cool is it to be able to like not like to like be able to understand so well different people, you know what I mean? Like as a trans man, I get like the thing I like feel like I'm in so many different worlds. You know what I mean? I'm in the trans community. I feel sometimes like I'm in touch with my feminine side, and I feel like a man because I'm obviously a man. But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like I feel bad for cis people sometimes because they won't get it. Like they'll never get it.
Yeah, they struggle so hard to like see the other gender and like they don't realize that they're so similar. Like once you've gone through like
Yeah.
HRT, you're like, oh, I see like this slight change in how my brain works, and like, but you are so similar. I find it like a privilege to be able to have experienced both genders and like not both genders, but both like ends of the spectrum, and
Mhm.
like especially as someone in social sciences, like it's important to understand people and just realize that they're simply people. It's not all about gender.
What kind of gender role, like, women have to go cook in the kitchen and men have to go work? No. No, no. No. Like, there's so many stay-at-home dads and, like, house husbands and stuff. Like, there's this one guy I follow on TikTok that I love. Like, if you're secure in yourself, you can be a house husband or whatever. Like, I'd love to be a trophy husband. Maybe cut that out, Cal. But, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be fine with it, you know? Like, if I wasn't, like, super ADHD and need to be doing something all the time, I could be a trophy husband, you know? Like, if you're secure enough in who you are, it's not going to affect you, you know?
And this
Sorry,
is why
yeah.
trans day visibility is so important because we are the key to like opening the door for so many people. People who
Yeah.
probably don't agree with our quote unquote identity now, like
Or
lifestyle,
life choices, yeah,
life choices, right?
quote
But
unquote.
we're the key to opening them and showing them that there's more than just being a stay-at-home mom and there's no other options, or we the key to showing them that there's so much more than gender norms,
Mm,
or like the sky's no, not even the sky, the stars are the limit.
yeah,
At the end of the day, it's going to be on that individual level.
yeah.
You say that you have a friend now who cares about you. I think the purpose of your life as a trans person is just finding those who you agree with, who support you, and growing that friend from one to two to three to four to five to 10. Um, and at the end of your life, you can sit in a room and say, I have all these people who support me, who I've laughed with and had these joyous moments.
Hmm.
And I don't think we should seek any kind of approval or acceptance. I mean, it would be nice, right? But from these
Yeah.
people who control policy, because I don't think that's ever going to happen. I mean, think about it now. There's so many people who are on different sides. There's people who are never going to see us as who we are. And that's
Hmm.
on them. That's not on us.
Yeah, I think that's a them problem. Like, their stuff, your stuff, you know? That's what I learned in therapy. Like, not my monkeys, not my circus, you know? Like, that's on them.
And if they want me to make them understand, again, they're going to have to give me a check because I'm not doing that for free.
I'm so sick of, like, being the token queer trans person of color, token person of color, and then the token trans person, you know? Like, people are like, oh, you're trans, you're a person of color. Tell us what we did wrong here. No! Like, you can like, I'm not the only one. Like, I'm not the only person of color. I'm not the only trans person. Like, figure it out yourself, and if you still can't find it out, like, hire me to consult for you. Don't just, like,
Exactly.
expect me to, you know? Like, you're making some good points. I don't think I'm just going to consult for people for free anymore. You're right,
I
Mitski.
mean,
Our time is valuable, you know? We shouldn't have to, like, do someone's job for them and not get paid.
And I know, Logan, you said like it's important to be informative, and I agree to a
Hmm.
certain level. Like, for example, if there's a friend that you have that crosses a certain boundary, then I mean, you do have it's kind of your responsibility, not as like a token trans person, but as a friend to tell them like, this is what this is what you did that made me feel uncomfortable, and this is what
Hmm.
Yeah, learning like boundaries and like good, healthy engagement. But I think it's important to kind of let them ask a little bit of questions because you never know if it's like somebody who's actually trans trying to figure themselves out. Because I know for certain I would not have been okay if I didn't have my friend who's trans femme like listen to me and answer my questions and like basically support me through my entire transition.
Yeah, I think I have this like little website I made in one of my classes, and I'm like, and people are like, oh, how did you know you're trans? I'm like, you know, actually, it's a pretty exhausting conversation to have with someone, but you can check out my website, and then I give them a link. You know, I just
no,
give them the link, and it works. You know, like, I don't want to have to explain myself and rehearse my trauma to every person who walks past, even if they do think they're trans. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so exhausting at a certain point. You know?
and even then, like those who are questioning themselves and their identity compared to those who are like just observing you and just like see you as a sideshow rather than
Mhm.
trying to figure their own stuff out.
Mhm.
And I think it's good to like go back to what you said, Sky. hey, like acknowledge that it's a trauma. Like it is really hard growing up as how you don't identify. And I don't think that people understand that. Like, I had to explain in one of my classes why I didn't want to be dead named. And I was like, if you're dead naming me, you're reminding me of my trauma every time. Like, you're not going to bring up somebody else's trauma, like, and remind them of that every time you want to refer to them. So I think
Mm,
that having that website, that's an awesome idea.
yeah. Feel free to take my idea if you want. Like, one of the other people at Encircle was like, "Oh, I love that idea. Can I use it?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." Like, the more websites you build, like, the less you have to talk to people about it. Like, unearth your trauma. Like, feel free. Anyone who's listening and you too, go ahead. I just made a Wix site. Used like a little template. It was done. Like, it was so easy.
That's brilliant. But also, Logan reminded me of something that Sky said about how, on a macro level, like celebrities who are trans don't really affect like the a common cis person. And I agree, but I also feel like they're important to as representation and role models to those who are trans. And
Yeah.
because for me, like I would have never had that light bulb in my head telling me, "Oh, I'm trans," until I saw that show called Pose, saying, "Oh, these are trans women." Not cis men pretending to be trans women, but actual trans women playing trans women in this show. And it's just
Yeah, sorry, go
amazing.
ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
having that
representation. Sorry, go
representation
ahead.
of like the actual like trans women playing trans women, not
Yeah.
anybody like a cis person playing a trans person, because that's like really frustrating. You should cast somebody who has that experience. Like there are so many great
Especially
actors.
since, sorry, go ahead. Especially since there's such a marginal, we're such a marginalized community, you know, like gay actors should play gay actors, and trans actors especially need to be played by trans actors. Do you know what I mean? Like, how would it, like it's like method acting, I guess, or whatever, but like, I don't understand how anyone who's cis could ever think of capturing my journey or any trans person's journey, you know what I mean? Like,
Not
in
only
a performance or even written. I
not
don't
only
know.
that, but when people don't see the big issue of like, oh yeah, he's a guy, but he was playing a trans woman. What's the big deal behind that? It's because people see a trans woman on screen, and then
Mhm.
they basically just see a cis man in a costume rather
Yeah.
than because when they go to accept up those awards, they see a cis man, not a trans woman.
Mhm. Visibility matters so much, especially in the light. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, I don't know. Like, on screen, you can be great or whatever, but, like, I don't know. Like, it really bothers me when people, like, cast straight cis people to play trans people. I don't know. Because then you're right, Mitski. Like, they don't show up, like, the same. And people are like, oh, it's just a costume. Or, like, oh, like, trans people, it's, like, or they fetishize trans women or something, you know? Like, it's not cool. I don't know.
And we need
And it's
more like
crazy because
non-binary characters and like representation, because I identify as
Yeah.
non-binary, but I don't want to like in public. I don't say that I use they them pronouns at all. Like in the general
Yeah.
space, I only use he him and just want to be seen as like cis guy. I want to like that idea of passing,
Yeah.
but
I think there's also a problem. Sorry, go ahead.
like if being non-binary was more visible, then I would be way more comfortable just like being myself, being non-binary, being just Logan.
Yeah, I think this our society's so binary and so gendered, and it's absolute garbage. Like, why? Why
Yeah,
do there
your
need to be
brain.
like gendered graduation robes? Right? Like, makes no sense.
Yeah, for
you want
real.
to
Like
sound
our
something
brains
even
just like
crazier.
categorize things, and they, especially with
Mm,
non-binary people, they go, "I can't put it into one of the boxes. I don't like it." Ah,
yeah. Sorry, you're saying Mitski?
I forget the title of this movie, but something that's even crazier is that the whole start of cis men playing as trans women started, I think, in the 40s or 50s, because this director was trying to cast for a trans woman, was trying to cast a trans woman in a film, and a trans woman, I forget her name, applied, and the director's like, "Oh, you look too much like a woman, and so we are not going to cast you," because yeah, and that's kind of like the whole start of the whole
Yeah.
not being represented in film.
Hmm.
Crazy.
I think it's disappointing because we all have so much to give,
Hmm.
and people don't let us, and that sucks.
I think we made some very valid points, and it was a pleasure and
Hmm.
a privilege to meet you all and
Yeah,
seeing Sky again. But I think that's all the time we have.
yeah. Thank you guys for listening. This has been a really cool experience. Really loved getting to know you, Logan, and you, Mitski. Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
been great being able to come on and hear your guys' opinions. I really appreciate your time.